Hey gamers, welcome to another episode of Bonus XP, and today we're gonna talk about face down, ass up. That's the way I like to Final Fantasy 9.
I did not know where you were going with that. I was like, wait a minute, this was not scripted. Okay, cool.
Not only are we talking about Final Fantasy 9, Jason, we're gonna talk about probably our favorite character.
Yeah, I would say so.
But this is one of my probably favorite Final Fantasy characters in general.
I think so too. I feel like it's we're gonna keep the suspense building for a long time unless people have read the title of this video.
It's Quina, right? It's
Quina. Oh, totally. I mean, I eat
quinoa.
Food. They eat food. Yeah, quinoa.
Quinoa is a food.
Yeah, I feel like with Final Fantasy 9, it was one of the first ones I played, so like the characters really hooked me, and that's kind of the main game mechanic there. Like the characters are like part of that whole, I don't know, plethora of why the game is awesome. But we're talking about, I say Vivi. I think you say Vivi. I don't know.
I say Vivi, yeah.
Yeah, I don't actually, do we actually know what it really is? Is it?
I don't think so, because again, we're talking from the era of games where they weren't voiced, so
that's true.
I think it's open to your interpretation, and like I think both are acceptable, but mine's based off of Vivi, like Vivian, and I know Vivi isn't female, but like that's kind of where my logic goes.
I think mine went from Vivi because I didn't know anyone named Vivian. I did in college though. I think it's the same Vivian that we knew, but like I saw VIVI and I was like, I don't know, 10, and I was like, that's Vivi, and I love them. Yeah, I know, so good. So yeah. Vivi, we're talking about Vivi.
I think this is one of those where I think both are acceptable. There are a couple like video game characters where I don't like. Tidus, I will never. I don't.
This isn't a Final Fantasy X bonus XP. It's a Final Fantasy 9 bonus XP.
One day in the future.
One day.
Jump on that. But yeah, we're no. But yeah, we're gonna talk about Final Fantasy 9's Vivi, whichever you will. And we're just kind of gonna break down our thoughts on this wonderful little character. And I think the first place I want to start is just his design. Like, totally. Let's just talk about what's going on in terms of his look or his name, anything that goes into just this little package of this adorable little character that we have.
This little boy in a Black Mage's body. But that's the thing for his design, and so much of 9 was just throwbacks to older Final Fantasies. So if the unaware, Vivi's design is pretty much identical to the Black Mage from the very first Final Fantasy. The blue outfit, the pointy hat, the all black face, you can only see his eyes. So that's kind of like the design to me, which I caught like immediately. Like having played the first Final Fantasy, I was like, hey, Black Mage. And like you don't really know what Vivi is until a little bit later, like when he finally does his spell in what is the town? It's not Tantalus. Is it Tantalus? Is that
Tantalus is the name of the group.
That's the group. What's the
Alexandria?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When he does it during the play or whatever. And so it was neat. It was a neat little throwback.
I don't think there's anything like, if you're a Final Fantasy fan, you probably know what a Black Mage is in general. So I think it's like one of the really easy calls. Like even Scott knows what a Black Mage is, and he's not even a Final Fantasy person.
He doesn't even go here.
To me, it's the little things that make Vivi different from the rest of them. Like, I think, when you think Black Mage in all the Final Fantasies, they have a very pointy hat.
The pointy hat, yeah.
And Vivi's is floppy.
No, that's true. That's true.
And a lot of the Black Mages have darker cloaks. And he has a lighter
blue. Yeah, that's true.
And I feel like some of these things are the little design choices that make him a lot more endearing.
Yeah. Well, it also like lines up with his character arc, which I know we'll get to later, but yeah, that's a good point.
All these little things are kind of the hinting to the type of character that he's going to be. He has an oversized staff, like compared to
and he
he's
like holds it.
And he's smaller than the rest of the Black Mages too. So there are a lot of these little things that I think are very smart, because he stands out right away from the rest of the Black Mages. He's not just blending in with your standard Black Mages. Like, there's something special about this guy here.
Yeah, by the way he looks, and I think it's probably important too to also say that he's probably, I don't know, maybe Quina is younger at heart, but he's got to be the youngest character in the party in that game.
He's not. Aiko
is it Aiko? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think technically he might be,
Mm-hmm.
because when you like kind of find out his story and how he was made and whatnot, like I think he's actually technically the youngest, but he seems like his
spiritual body. Yeah.
He seems like he's constructed to be something a little bit older than that. One other thing I want to talk about with his design that I think is really smart, and this is going to lead into what I want to talk about next, which is kind of his plot arc, is his name. And we talked about this on our Final Fantasy episode way back in the day. And I did a trivia question, and we were reading quotes and guessing who said it and whatnot. One of the people I picked was Vivi, and my clue for you was something to do with his name. And his name is Vivi Ornatier. And to me, like, kind of reading into linguistics and whatnot and thinking about his plot arc, Ornatier kind of looks like the word ornate, kind of like an ornate object. And then Vivi looks like Greek, Latin, Roman, Spanish, French, vivere, which means to live. So this is just like me being super hypothetical in his name, but it's almost like his name is like this living ornate thing, which lines up with his story perfectly.
Pretty perfect. Yeah.
Because, Black Mages, as a lot of Final Fantasy players know, aren't normal beings. Like, they are constructed beings. They're almost golems in a way. So I think that's a pretty clever play on words with his name. What do you think about that?
That's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that until you kind of brought it up right now, to be honest. But it makes sense. I feel like the designers for Final Fantasy games aren't dumb. Like, they make like logical choices for how they do it. Okay,
I've seen Final Fantasy 13. So
okay, this is pre-13. This is while they're still on the great track record. Freaking lightning. So I think
whoa, just stop. Of all of the characters that you're going to pick in that game, Lightning is the one that you're going to point as dumb.
I
love Lightning.
I don't like the name.
She's like the only character I think I like in that game.
I feel like it makes sense. They made freaking 3 games with her in it, so it's all good. Anyways, I don't think that would be coincidence for Vivi's name. I feel like they probably did it on purpose, and I think it lines up with other design elements for games where there is like pulls from other lores, other cultures, other things from the previous Final Fantasies, so it completely makes sense. That completely went over my head when I was like playing it the first time. I had no idea. So I feel like if you did though, you'd be like, oh, cool. Like that's what that means. That's neat.
I think I'm super into the Romance languages and like Greek and Latin roots, because I used to teach roots to my kids getting ready for like SAT, and our for us, we took iStep, but if you're not in Indiana, you don't know what iStep
standardized
is.
Testing,
your standardized testing, and teaching them like how the roots can help you identify certain words and whatnot. Sure. And like, to me, that's kind of this where I like it when there are subtle hints about a character's personality in their name, but it's not so on the nose that you're just kind of like, oh, this character's name is Badass. Like, I wonder what kind of character he's going to be.
Vivi, life questioner. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Living Golem is his name. Hashtag living. So yeah, I like it. I like these little things where I think it's that extra mile for nerds where you kind of think about
another little morsel of loving it. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. Okay, well, so that kind of leads us into his plot arc. And I think this is a huge one. I think this is one of the reasons why Vivi is such a standout character. Is he, and honestly, all the Final Fantasy 9 characters, but a lot of the Final Fantasy 9 characters, one of the reasons why Final Fantasy 9 is, to me, one of the best ones, along with 6, is because there is a lot of self-discovery among the characters.
Yeah.
It's not so much just characters going place to place and doing things like you see in most Final Fantasies, 7 included. You get to see like a theme with this character.
That's true.
And a lot of the characters in 9 have that, and it's why it's so endearing and lovable. Why don't you kind of give us like a little summary, like what is Vivi's, for those people who maybe didn't catch it, or those people who haven't played 9, what's going on with this kiddo in this game?
Yeah, for sure. I think it also helps that Vivi's story it's like the first one you get besides Zidane, so he's like one of your first party members, so you follow him from the beginning, which is nice. I mean, I love Amaranth and Freya and whatnot, but like I bonded with Vivi first, so there's that.
He has a little bit of everything going for him. Like he's a comic relief, but but he's also interesting. Where some of the other characters, like Steiner, is a little bit more like a heavier comic relief. So you get to see it from the very beginning,
very beginning, and that's like his whole arc. You see from the beginning to the end. And overall, with Final Fantasy IX, I think I've said this before on this podcast. I feel like the overall story is like friendship and defining, giving your life reason. And that's really exemplified with Vivi's. So you start off and you find him in the streets. He's like in the slums. He's afraid. He's nervous. I don't want to spoil this 20-year-old game for you, but things happen, and he eventually.
Oh, we're gonna spoil it. Like, that's why we're here. We're analyzing it. You got to know spoilers from here on.
Okay, we're gonna spoil it. So eventually it's discovered that he's a black mage, like to the party, and he's afraid of using his powers because he might hurt people, which is kind of what's done before. He doesn't really know why he has them. Advance the story a little bit, you find that he's part of this like black mage construct civilization kind of that's used for war basically. And
and he didn't even know that. Like he didn't know that he was a construct either.
Yeah. And so when he discovers that, he starts to evolve character-wise to try to save the world basically. And he doesn't want to bring harm. So he starts to realize, I'm powerful. I can use this power to stop others from harming the world and my friends. And then he starts to find purpose, knowing that he is not the only one of these constructs that has basically gained sentience and like knows what they're doing. There are others that are still just fighting this war for Queen Braun, and they're kind of evil, but there are some that are happy and like living their life.
Black Mage Village.
At Black Mage Village. You progress the story even further. It's found out that I'm pretty sure all of them are like dead now because Kuja kind of steals them. And so there's one that's left over, this black mage that's more like philosophical and oracle to Vivi.
Well, no, it's so everyone who's in Black Mage Village are the people black mages who just kind of like woke up and they don't know why. And Vivi kind of questions along his journey, like, why am I
different?
Aware? Why am I different? And you do find out that it's not just him, but it's completely random. You find out the other pivotal thing, which I think is kind of what you were starting to say, is that like they have a time limit.
Yeah. They're gonna eventually die, and they don't
expire.
Yeah, they stop. And even when I was young, I was like, why do they stop? Like, they're robots? But like I didn't piece together that like it's an analogy for death. So they will eventually die. And so Vivi will take that information and kind of the revenge-ish against Kuja and saving the world with his friends. And that's how you get towards the end game of Final Fantasy IX.
It's very
generic intro.
It's very existential. Like, I think existentialism is just the hugest part where, you know, Vivi has never really thought about his life before, not even really sure how old he is. And then, you know, he finds out he has other people like him, but they're not like him. And that's very upsetting because it makes him question, who am I? Yeah. And then he also finds out that he has like a time limit, which we all do. Yeah. But his time limit is a lot more random because like you just don't know, like, when is the power gonna go out, when is the off switch gonna go. He could not do anything critical or dangerous and he could still just shut down one day. So from there, his existential journey kind of evolves into, what am I going to do with my time? And I think that's one of the reasons why he's just one of Final Fantasy's most endearing characters, because he knows that he has an end, but he loves people and loves the world and like happy things. And
he fights for it.
Yeah, he fights for it, even though he knows that like he may never get to see that world where people are safe and people are free. And like there are some points where throughout the game everyone is giving Vivi life, like, hey, you're not like these black mages, we're not afraid of you because we know that you're a good person. So just because you see people that look like you, they're not you. And they're constantly giving him this advice to build him up. But then at the very end of the game, you know, Zidane has his own breakdown when he also finds out that he's a construct. And here's Vivi coming in with the sage advice of, you know, like, don't, you know, you told me live your life, be who you want to be, you've really built us up, you like apply this to yourself, like you are a good.
You're saying it now, and I'm already getting the goosebumps again, because I feel like it was such a neat moment. Like, and it's kind of cliche in a sense. Like, this character comes around and then it helps the other character that started the process. But like, they meet at the end, and it's so cool to see like this scared and timid little child, in a sense, become this powerful sage-like being, which really lines up with, like, you know, mysticism with Final Fantasy's magic classes. But it's cool, it's neat, and you just feel so strong for him, because Vivi's convictions are, well, and Zidane's, they're always like really nice, they're always going for the right thing. But with Vivi's, you feel like there is pain and there is destruction and there is fear, like, in his life, but he strives to, and does, overcome them to like transcend that feeling and help his friends, and eventually, spoilers, they save the world. So like, it does happen.
And eventually, even more spoilers. So we talked about this on that Final Fantasy episode, which I'll probably link in the comments for anyone who's new, who's coming through. So biggest spoiler for the end game, Vivi does stop. He's dead. And it's just alluded.
It's just off screen.
It's not definitive, but Zidane gets a letter from Vivi, and he's thanking him for everything. And I mean, like, it's really sad, and I know that was one of the things that made me feel really bummed while playing the game. But, you know, I also just think it's kind of great, because it kind of like showed that here's someone who found a purpose, who, you know, what literally lived his best life to do what he could.
He did what he set out to do.
Instead of just going and like bumming, you know, or just being like everyone else. There's just a lot of really great things to pick apart in a character like this. And this is what I want to see in
newer Final Fantasies.
Definitely newer Final Fantasies, but any game, you know, like, it doesn't just have to be a Final Fantasy. These are the types of things that really draw you in, because he's a complex character. He's funny. He's endearing. He's pretty awesome to use in battle. There's a lot of just like little snippet scenes where you have to think about it. It's not kind of like, oh yeah, he's a robot. He's not a robot. You know, there's a lot more. This is not that robot who gets feelings character. This is that any human who is trying to figure out what to do with their limited time. It's just very relatable in that way.
I agree with you. I'm glad I was about to say it. It's relatable. And I feel like that's what, personally, I think is missing from other games. I could pick on Final Fantasy specifically and look at 15. I mean, I love Noctis. That group is cool. I have friends. I'd like to ride in a flying car, but like, you know, I'm not a prince. Like, I don't have this, I'm not exiled from my land. Like, these problems aren't here. But with Vivi, at the time, I was a child. I didn't know what I was doing in my life. Like, I wanted to be strong and powerful, and I was afraid of the future. Like,
you're a wizard, Harry.
I'm a wizard. So like, these are all things that are very relatable. And granted, you know, at the time, if I wasn't those things, like if I wasn't a kid, if I was an adult, I might not bond as much. But the fact is, I was. So like, it worked for me. So I think that it makes sense. In that sort of simple yet complex theory for character design, it really, really works to have that person in there. And then Vivi just was written well, and they played well in the game. They were good too. So like, it was fun to hear their story and then also use them. So it worked well.
Let's talk about that now, because I think this is a good way to end up a discussion of character use. Like, if we're going to do a full analysis on a character, we have to talk about their viability in the game, like all the things we can do. And like, I don't think we really need to say like, yeah, he's a Black Mage, he uses magic, we know.
Yeah.
But did you like using Vivi in your party? Did you get a lot of use out of the things that he could do? Because I feel like we might have differing opinions on it.
Yeah, I tried to use Vivi all the time. He was essentially my glass cannon that I tried to use for the most of the game. And whenever he could be there, I would throw him in there. The only time I wouldn't is if, you know, story didn't allow you. But if I needed, like, tankier characters, like, I think then I would sub in, like, Quina or someone else that might be able to take a bigger hit. But no, I usually used Vivi. And that was the game where I discovered the powers of ethers and trying to get your MP back, because I'd be like, he's so great, but like, I can't use this all the time because I'm gonna I need to conserve my MP. So he taught me that too, the life lessons from Vivi. But yeah, I used him whenever I could. I thought he was like one of the most fun characters in the game.
I felt like he's in a weird position where he'll like, you'll see a big spike in his usefulness, and then he'll plateau, and then you'll see a big spike, and then he'll plateau. And I think it really goes in conjunction with every time you get the next tier of
the
his
next
spells.
spell.
So like obviously like magic at the very beginning is good, and then you don't get like Thyra and Blizzara for a little while. So like there's a part where it's just kind of like Vivi's not really keeping up on damage, and then he gets Thyra and Blizzara and Thundara's and he's like all of a sudden you're like murdering things. And then the same thing until you get the Agas. But I think a part of the reason why is physical damage in Final Fantasy 9 is so overpowered compared to magic damage, and I think that's kind of a big thing in a lot of the Final Fantasies minus maybe like 6, like 8, 9, 10, like you said 8, you're almost pressured not to use magic.
You can just brute force everything in that game,
right? And I felt like this was kind of the same thing, especially when you go into trance.
Trance.
Where like you can double cast, which I think is super nice, but at the same time like everyone else is doing so much more damage, all the physical fighters that, so I think for me Vivi's kind of in the middle ground.
But it is nice though. I feel like that's an okay place to be, like I don't want to have a meta with like there's 10 characters and I only use like 3 of them exclusively. I want to rotate out, but I feel like in the middle is okay. Like there's some characters I thought were a little bit more niche and I just never used them. Like Amaranth I never really used all that often. Aiko I didn't use because I'm like I don't want to spend my time waiting minutes to summon characters on the screen. So there was those things too, but Vivi was always kind of solid for me. I always thought it was fun. I also want to point out I really liked his battle stance animations where he would just kind of like hop along with his staff the whole time. Ugh, I loved it. It made me laugh every time.
Literally, and then
and then he was like, exactly.
And which I think those changed based on the spell he's using too.
Like, the spell,
Like if he's doing some of the stronger spells, I think it's a little different. I mean, I'm sure you haven't played the game in an eternity. I played it when it released on on PS4, cool. So it hasn't been like too long ago. I also think it's really cool how when he trances, his outfit becomes a complete Black Mage.
It's just totally Black Mage.
Like his hat is and his hat is pointy, and like he looks like the thing that is really inside of him, which is like a powerful mage. Like he is just like everyone else in terms of capability and whatnot.
Yeah, it's true. It is pretty cool. Trans in that game was neat because I hadn't played 7 at the time, so I didn't know limit breaks and all that jazz. So I thought it was this neat ability, but I did agree with you that like Vivi's just didn't feel as impactful as like Zidane's or even Garnet's when I'm like, oh yeah, please heal everyone. And so like that was useful.
I honestly, trance to me isn't even useful in the game. Like,
it's too random. Yeah.
It's very useful. I guess it's not necessary.
It's not necessary. Yeah.
The limit break and being able to use this like one powerful move didn't necessarily have a brokenness to it, but the fact that you could be trans for several turns, like the game is not hard. I think you really only see the difficulty spike with the final
at the
boss. Like literally over some of the optional bosses. So just the fact that like Zidane alone can solo most bosses, especially if he goes in trance, like he's hitting max damage is silly. But like Vivi doesn't really get that benefit, which I love magic.
He doesn't
games.
need it. He's cool anyways. He doesn't need that shit. Yeah. So we're good.
But here we are talking about a character who's like mid in a lineup, but he is just such an impressionable,
he's too lovable
overall.
Yeah.
He's just
you don't want to not use him. Yeah, I agree.
Well, I think that's a good little analysis on our homie Vivi here.
It's fun.
We definitely want to hear your thoughts on this adorable little Black Mage, so sound off in the comments. And
definitely.
Jason, where can the conversation keep going for our listeners?
Everywhere. No, you can find us everywhere. You can find us online if you're not already following Instagram, Twitter at HeyRPGaymer. I know our Discord is active right now. During this recording, I hear the little pings going off, so thanks for chatting about games there too. But yeah, and then of course we have our podcast all the time too. You can check us out wherever you can find podcasts. Spotify, Apple.
Yeah, gamers, we had a good time with you. Keep gaming. Go on out there. Have fun. Peace.